Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. All right. I am now creating my third video lesson. The reason is that number one, I'm still not sure if I could meet you tomorrow. Number two, I realized that we only have two sessions left before the quarterly assessment. So meaning we're running out of time. I don't have time to discuss everything face to face. And pagbalik ko, dalawang session na lang and we can use that para sa review na lang in preparation for your quarterly assessment. So please, class, please watch the videos seriously. As much as possible, please jot down important information from the presentation and be ready for our exam. Is that all right? All right, sige. So class, we're done with the three components of MAPE. We're done with health, PE, arts, and now we're moving on to the last component, which is music. And this will be our last component and last topic, all right? So for today's lesson, we will be talking about the music of the medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque period. So basically, babalikan lang natin yung history as well as the characteristics, the elements, and the famous composers during this era. And these are our lesson objectives. We will describe the musical elements of selected vocal and instrumental music of medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque music, and explain the performance practices during this era. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with the music of the medieval period. I am so sorry, class. If you notice, wala na po akong activity and games. Tinanggal ko na, no? To shorten the video. And yes, we're running out of time and bawi na lang ako pagbalik ko. Is that okay? All right, sige. Let's start once again. Let's start with the music of the medieval period. So just to give you a background, when we say medieval period, that is also known as the Middle Ages or Dark Ages, which started with the fall of the Roman Empire. And during this era, the Christian church was greatly influenced by Europe's culture and political affairs. So, what are the characteristics of the medieval music? Okay, number one, they are both sacred and secular. So again, their music are sacred and secular. Now, ma'am, what is the difference between sacred and secular? What does it mean? Okay, so when we say sacred music, that was used in worship and religious ceremonies in churches. Again, this is for worship and religious ceremonies para sa simbahan. Kanta para sa simbahan. When we say secular music, that was used for entertainment purposes such as weddings and social celebrations and of course gatherings. Okay, yun po ang difference. Kapag sacred, kanta para sa simbahan. Pag secular, kanta para sa party, mga celebration. No? That's the first characteristic of medieval music, sacred and secular. That's the theme. And number two, monody or monophonic. Okay, so what do you mean by monody or monophonic? Ang nakalagay dito, one sound. Because when we say monody, that refers to a solo vocal style distinguished by having a single, tandaan ang word na single melodic line and instrumental accompaniments. Ibig sabihin, one sound lang ang naririnig natin dahil meron lang siyang single melodic line and single instrumental accompaniment. For example, class. For example, when you hear a guitarist strumming chords and singing a song or a melody, then ibig sabihin you are listening to monody kasi may isang melody and may isang instrumental accompaniment. All right? And this monody or monophonic is also known as plain chant or plain song. Okay? At ang mga plain chant or plain song na yan ay tinatawag din na Gregorian chant. So, you might be asking, what is Gregorian chant? Okay? So, when we say Gregorian chant, class, this it is an example of monophonic plain chant. Okay? It was named after Pope Gregory the First, who made Gregorian chant approved music of the Catholic Church. So again, it was named after Pope Gregory. Kaya po ang tawag sa kanya ay Gregorian chant dahil ito yung inapprove niya na pwedeng kantahin sa mga Catholic Church. So when we say Gregorian chant, that is a monodic and rhythmically free liturgical chant of the Roman Catholic Church. So what is an example? Here is an example. Okay, so if you notice class, based on the song, that is an example of Gregorian chant, there is only one melody or single melody and instrumental accompaniment. Okay, kapag sinabi nating plain chant or Gregorian chant or monody or monophonic, ibig sabihin, merong single voice or only one sound. All right. Next is, who is the famous composer during the Middle Period? So none other than Adam de la Halle. So who is Adam de la Halle? So Adam de la Halle class was a French-born musician and a poet. He made history in the world of music during the medieval period. So he is known for his uniqueness and versatility, and he was a self-proclaimed genius, often describing himself as the master. Siya daw ay isang master because he mastered the monophonic composition and its more complex form, the motet. So he died in Italy in 1285. So again, ang pinaka-famous composer po during the medieval period is Adam de la Halle. Next is the music of the Renaissance period. What do you mean naman by Renaissance? So just to give you a little background, so the term Renaissance came from the word renaître, which means rebirth, revival, and rediscovery. So it occurred after the crisis of the late Middle Ages and was associated with great social change. Meron daw great social change, matinding pagbabago. In addition to the standard periodization, proponents of a long Renaissance may put its beginning in the 14th century and its end in the 17th century. So for musicians, this is an era of discovery, innovation, and exploration. All right? So, what are the characteristics of the Renaissance music? Number one, this is mostly polyphonic. Kanina sa medieval period, ang nakalagay doon, monophonic, di ba? May single sound. Ngayon naman, polyphonic. Ito po ay kabaligtaran. Maraming sounds. That means many sounds, no? Polyphonic class in music, that means the simultaneous combination of two or more tones or melodic lines. Okay? So the term derives from the Greek word for many sounds. Kasi ang poly, P-O-L-Y, that means many. So polyphonic music, that means it has many voices or many sounds. Ano ang halimbawa? Example is simply by having musicians play or sing two different songs simultaneously. Pag ang mga musicians, they're singing two different songs simultaneously. For example, yung dalawang singer, yung isa, siya yung main singer, yung isa yung backup, and yung backup, he or she is harmonizing with the main singer. So yun po ang ibig sabihin ng polyphonic. Again, many sounds, many voices. And other characteristics of Renaissance music, number one, imitation among voices is common. So in music class, imitation is the repetition of a melody in a polyphonic texture shortly after its first appearance in a different voice. All right, ibig sabihin, when we say imitation, there is just a repetition of a melody. Number two, another characteristic, melodic lines move in a flowing manner. Ibig sabihin, for example, a singer performing a melody that starts slow, then climbs higher, and higher one note at a time. So mula sa mababa, pataas ng pataas ang melody. So that means the melodic lines are moving in a flowing manner. And number 3, modality still prevails in both sacred and secular. So kagaya sa medieval period, ang mga songs pa rin po natin ay sacred and secular. So again, what's the difference between sacred and secular? When we say sacred, para sa simbahan, no? For worship, for religion, and for secular, this is for entertainment purposes. So meron po tayong dalawang vocal music during the Renaissance period. Number 1 is Mass and number 2 is Madrigal. Yan ang tandaan nyo, pakisulat, Mass and Madrigal. So when we say Mass, that is a form of sacred musical composition that sets text of the Eucharistic liturgy into music. So class, wag malito dahil itong Mass, kung nagsisimba kayo, alam na alam niyo to. So 'di ba yung mga, for example, yung mga nakasulat sa Bible, yung mga dasal, no? Kinakanta natin sa simbahan. Yung text, pinuput natin into music. Ito po ay sa simbahan, Mass. And when we say madrigal, this is a form of secular vocal polyphonic music composition which originated from Italy. It was written and expressed in poetic text and sung during courtly social gatherings. Again, it was sung during social gathering. It is the most important secular form during the Renaissance period. And in our time today, class, sa panahon natin, this is equivalent to the songs that we play during parties. So, dyan sa dalawang yan, alin ang kabilang sa sacred and alin ang secular? Alright, ang Mass po ay kabilang sa sacred dahil ito ay sa simbahan. Ibig sabihin, yung mga nakasulat sa Bible, yung mga dasal, kinakanta natin. Yung mga text ay kinakanta natin, no? Kagaya ng Ama Namin, kinakanta natin siya, di ba? We are putting the text into music. And itong madrigal naman, ito ay for social gatherings. Again, kung sa panahon natin ngayon, ito yung mga kanta na piniplay natin kapag tayo ay nasa party. At ito ay kabilang sa secular music. Again, 2 vocal music during the Renaissance period, Mass and Madrigal. Now, who are the famous composers during this time? Number 1, we have Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina. So, who is he? So, Giovanni Pierluigi Palestrina is an Italian Renaissance composer of sacred music and the best-known 16th century representative of the Roman School of Musical Composition. Again, siya po ay gumagawa ng sacred music para sa simbahan. He composed more than 100 mass settings and over 250 motets. So, class, may nakita kayo ditong motets? Are you familiar with this word? Motet, M-O-T-E-T. So, class, when we say motet, tandaan, that is a polyphonic choral works in Latin text. It can be used in any service of the churches and usually in a cappella. Sounds smoothing and imitative in nature. So, ang motet po, ito po ay isang choral work. Ito rin po ay kinakanta sa simbahan and usually a cappella. When we say a cappella, there is no accompaniment, all right? And before he achieved his goals, he was an organist and a choir master. Okay, siya po ay isang organist and choir master. Next, another famous composer during this time is Thomas Morley. Another famous composer of the Renaissance era, and he was also an organist, no? And a singer in the local cathedral from his boyhood. So, simula bata, singer na siya sa simbahan. And he is the most famous composer of secular music in his time. Kung si Giovanni Pierluigi ay gumagawa ng sacred music, again, para sa simbahan, ito namang si Thomas Morley ay composer ng secular music. Yung mga music na napaparinggan natin sa parties or sa kanila sa mga social gatherings. All right, next, let's move on to the last period. We have the music of the work, or a Baroque period there. So the Baroque period, class, just to give you a background, that can be traced from the ancient Portuguese noun Barroco, B-A-R-R-O-C-O, and that means a pearl that is not round but of unpredictable and elaborate shape or pearl of irregular shape. Yun po ang ibig sabihin ng Baroque. Pearl of irregular shape. And that is, during this time, the arts highlighted grand and elaborate ornamentation. Again, ang mga arts, ang music po, they are very grand, no? In grande and elaborate. There were clearly seen in the musical compositions created by Baroque composers. So what are the characteristics of Baroque music? Melodies sound elaborate and ornamental. That's number one. No, during the period, composers and performers use more elaborate musical ornamentation. Paano naging elaborate? Paano naging grand? They made changes in musical notation and they developed new instrumental playing techniques. So, meaning there is an embellishment of a melody either by adding notes or by modifying rhythms. Minomodify nila ang rhythms. And melodies are not easy to sing or remember. Hindi daw madaling tandaan dahil nga um, um, maraming changes, no? Nag-develop sila ng new musical techniques, they made changes in musical notation, and the like. And number 3, there is a dynamic contrast. What do you mean by that? So the Baroque class is the first period in which dynamic contrast is often part of the compositional plan of a piece. So when we say dynamic contrast, ito po yung technique of abruptly switching between very loud and very soft. So switching to very loud to very soft in a composition. And so class, there are also 5 musical genres during this period. Ito po ang mga musical genres during this period. Number 1, we have opera. So you guys are familiar with opera, right? Oo, sige. Familiar with opera. So when we say opera, that is a dramatic work or genre of classical time. So ang opera, as you know, that is a stage drama, diba? A stage drama set to music in its entirety, and that is made of vocal pieces with instrumental accompaniment. So lahat naman siguro tayo nakapanood na ng opera. But to give you an example, here is an example. Okay, so much for that. Again, that is an example of opera. Again, that is a stage drama. Nagdadrama sila and pero yung kanilang mga lines, no, ay kinakanta nila through song. And that is opera. Aside from that, we also have oratorio. So what is oratorio? An oratory class is a religious narrative large-scale work for orchestra and voices performed without costumes, scenery, or action. So unlike opera, na merong mga costume, nagdadrama sila sa stage. This one, there is just, what do you call this? Parang choir or orchestra, and then, walang costume, walang action, walang drama, but this is used for religious topic and simple staging are the hallmarks of an oratorio. So, ang pinaka-famous na example ng oratorio is the Hallelujah Chorus. 'Di ba? Nagsisimba naman kayo and alam niyo yung kanta na Hallelujah, 'di ba? And that is from a larger work called Messiah, no? At ang sumulat niyan ay si Handel. Mamaya makikilala niyo kung sino si Handel na nagsulat ng Messiah. This is an example of oratorio. Again, ang oratorio po, walang drama. This is used for religious purposes. Para sa simbahan also. Okay, that's all. Again, oratorio, that's for religious purposes. Kinakanta sa simbahan, ang pinaka famous na kanta ay Hallelujah. Yung chorus ng Hallelujah. Next, number three, another musical genre during the Baroque period is suite, S-U-I-T-E. And that means a set of instrumental compositions for dance style. So what does it mean? So ibig sabihin, class, this one is suite in Western and classical music and jazz that is an ordered set of instrumental or orchestral concert band pieces, and it originated in the late 14th century as a pairing of dance tunes. So ito class ay para sa mga ito ay tugtog no para sa mga dance style, different dance styles. For example, yung mga courtly dance for couples, yan. Ito po yung mga music na ginagamit. And this is an example of that music. Okay, so much for that. Again, that is an example of a music or dance tunes for used for courtly dance for couples. So imagine plus no kung ganyan yung music habang sumasayaw kayo ng partner nyo. So romantic. Okay, wag tayong maharot. Let's proceed to the next musical genre. We have Concerto Grosso. So what does it mean? Concerto Grosso is an instrumental form for a small group of soloists and full orchestra. So you've probably seen the term Concerto Grosso and wondered what is that, no? Well, as you can probably guess, it does not mean that the concerto is gross. So when we say concerto grosso, that is an Italian for big concert or big concerto or a concert, big concert. So unlike a solo concerto where a single solo instrument plays the melody line and is accompanied by the orchestra, in a concerto grosso or big concerto, a small group of soloists passes the melody between themselves and the orchestra or a small ensemble. So dito class, mayroong group of soloists, mayroong group of singers, and mayroong mga instrumental accompaniments ng violins, mga bass melody instruments such as a cello, and harmony instruments such as a harpsichord, mayroon ding mga wind instruments, and yung orchestra naman was usually a string orchestra or a small ensemble of strings, mga ganong instruments. So here is an example of a concerto grosso. It's taking so long. Okay, let's wait. Okay. Okay, that's it. So much for that. As you can see, there is a group of soloists playing their instruments, creating a very nice and harmonious sound. So that's Concerto Grosso. And the last one, the last musical genre during the Baroque period is a fugue, F-U-G. UE. So what do you mean by that? That is a contrapuntal composition in which a short melody is introduced by one part and successively taken up by the others and developed by interweaving the part. So what does it mean? So that is a musical composition in which one or two themes are repeated or imitated by successively entering voices. So parang kagaya ng polyphonic kanina, no? There are many sounds, many voices, and then nag-enter sila successively sa kanta. Parang may mga backups na nag-harmonize, no? That's it. This is an example. Okay, that's it. So if you notice, hindi lang isang instrument ang ginamit. Hindi siya monophony. This is polyphonic. Ibig sabihin, using, for example, in the video, two instruments at a time. Nagsimula, it was introduced by a piano, by one part, and then successively taken up by other instrument. And then developed by interweaving the part. So that is fugue. Fugue. All right. So I think we're done with the musical genre. We'll now proceed to the famous composers. So there are, I think, a lot of famous composers during this period. I think there are four. Number one, no, the Baroque period was generally a time of newfound ideas. Maraming pagbabago sa music during the Baroque period. And from major innovations in science to vivid changes in geography, people were exploring the world around them. And the music of the Baroque period was just as extreme as the new changes. So many of the personalities from the early part of the Baroque period are Antonio Vivaldi and Claudio Monteverde, who both came from Italy. No, you're familiar with Antonio Vivaldi, right? Lagi nating naririnig. And later, composers from Germany like the famous Bach and Handel began to take center stage in Baroque music composition. So again, another famous composers aside from Antonio Vivaldi and Claudio Monteverde, who came from Italy, are Johann Sebastian Bach and George Friedrich Handel. Okay? Itong dalawa naman, they're from Germany. So, ang pinaka-famous class, the first great oration surfaced in the early 18th century ay ginawa ni George Friedrich Handel, no? He was the most prolific composer of this style and wrote many works such as Israel in Egypt, Saul, Samson, and the most famous among all, yung sinabi ko kanina, is the Messiah. So, ang Messiah class is an English language oratorio. That's an oratorio, no? Sa simbahan natin yun maririnig. And ang pinaka-famous class na chorus ng Messiah ay yung Hallelujah chorus, where the audience stand up while it is being sung. Okay? Alright. So, meron pa ba? Okay, wala na pong kasunod. So, yun lang naman, class, ang laman ng ating lesson sa music. The characteristics of music during the medieval, the Renaissance, and the Baroque period. So, next meeting, hopefully magkita na tayo, mag-review lang po tayo. And hindi na ako magbibigay ng activity for this dahil alam ko naman na marami na akong nabigay na activity, and I know you guys are also busy with other subjects. So, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Message me lang, ha? Alright, sige. Bye-bye. That would be all for today. Thank you. Bye.